Hi, everyone. We'll just give you a moment to log in and get ready to join us. Awesome. Welcome, everyone, to episode number 5 of my weekly live chats. This week, we start a new theme as we shift into the month of December. We are going to answer the top 12 questions of 2020 spread out over the next 3 weeks. So this week, we're going to answer questions 12 through 9. I have my friend Bradley Hilton. He's a fellow Badfish team rider, river guide, and adventurer, joining me to help answer some of the questions that I've collected via Instagram, Facebook, and in person through my paddling classes. So don't be shy tonight, guys, to in the comments, ask us some questions, add to the witty banner, keep the conversations going, and we will be happy to elaborate on any of the answers that we've given. So without further ado, I am going to bring into the conversation my good friend, Bradley Hilton. Hey, Bradley, welcome to my live chats. How's it going tonight?
Hi, Rita. It's going really well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. I'm excited. It's been a really long time since we've actually seen each other in person.
Yeah, I think it has. Too long for sure.
Too long, yeah. Normally we would have spent all of May and June paddling as a big posse, and I think I just dream of when we'll be able to do that again in the future.
Yeah, I dream of it as well. I mean, missing out on being with everybody this summer was hard, but I think it was also, we were all kind of forced to take a break with a lot of things, and so we just kind of rolled with it. And I think that a lot of those communities are going to come back stronger than ever, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, life was like a river this year, and maybe we got slowed down a little bit by a new log jam that formed or some ice buildup on the river. Things were slowed down a little bit, but as we all get back flowing, I agree with you, we'll be stronger and more powerful. Well, before we get too deep into answering some of the questions, Bradley, for those that may not know who you are, can you give us a little bit of a personal introduction?
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Bradley. I'm 6 feet tall. I have blue eyes, and I'm a Capricorn. And I'm from Colorado, from a small town at the headwaters of the Colorado River. And I started into whitewater sports and paddling close to 10 years ago. And in fact, I think this coming season will be my 10th full serious season in whitewater. And I've been stand-up paddling that whole time. The sport really took my life in a positive direction and spun me off into the whole realm of health and wellness and surfing and traveling and all kinds of cool things. And so it's defined kind of the last decade of my life in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, now I'm here. It's winter time. So, just like you, I'm just trying to keep myself busy, and we do things like this to keep ourselves sane.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jackie, one of my friends here, I think in response to your introduction, wanted to know if she could swipe left or right.
Gotcha. I mean, I would tell you which way, but I don't use the app, so I don't know which swipe means what.
Yeah, and so Bradley, that being said, that you're working on the paddleboarding and getting it to season, can you share a little bit more about what river stand-up paddleboarding means to you?
What river stand-up paddling means to me. I mean, initially it was just like a totally kind of intense, crazy way to get in the river and experience whitewater and just learn about that whole like that whole element. But then after I kept falling in love with the sport over and over again, and it kept taking me different places and kind of like bringing me into different aspects of who I am, and both physically and mentally, now it's kind of like progressed into like an outlet of kind of like artistic expression, and sometimes like spiritual expression of being in the flow of the river. And have you ever heard of the Chinese like phrase Wu Wei? Wu Wei. If anyone wants to learn about this, like search Alan Watts, who was a Western philosopher in the 60s and 70s, and Wu Wei. And it's essentially like it's the flow of nature, and it's the flow of life. And so you can be integrated into Wu Wei by floating down the river, right? If you're trying to go against that current in any way, then you're going against it. And so you can just have like a really powerful life experience by going with that kind of flow. So stand-up paddling now basically gives me the opportunity to participate in that flow in like a skilled manner, since I'm well practiced,
Yeah, totally. Awesome. That's a really interesting perspective. I like, Bradley, I always learn something different or gain a different perspective on the river when we talk. And I think that's why I always really appreciate our conversations. Yeah, I like John Blackshire's tuning in. He's like, yeah, the flow state. That's what that means to him, is the flow state. I like it. And yeah, finding the flow. Everybody was feeling it. Nice. So Bradley, before we get into answering some of those top gear questions, and Andrew, I do see your question along the side. We are actually going to chat a little bit about different types of cold water paddling gear and stuff a little bit later on in the show. So we'll come back to that question. But before we get into those questions and the chat about gear, Bradley, I know that you still had an amazing season, although it may have looked different than some of your years in the past, and you had quite a few season highlights. Can you start by sharing one of those with us?
Yes, I'd love to. Let's see. At the end of last winter, I traveled down to El Salvador to go surfing and to spend some time with some friends as kind of like a spring break thing. And that was end of February, early March, which is when we went on to, when the pandemic kind of like fully hit worldwide, and everything happened, and we kind of had to lock down. So my primary like lockdown there for 40 days ish was on the beach in El Salvador. And unfortunately, not too far into that, the beaches were closed. So we weren't really able to go surf all day, every day like we wanted to. But in the early April, I don't remember the exact date, but there was a full moon. And me and my buddy Adrian, who owns a yoga retreat center down there with his wife, Lindsay, called Balance, we snuck out, at like 4 a.m. under the full moon to go surf overhead waves. We're the only people out there, as it was dawn light was coming, and I was in good enough shape to where I was able to finally step down to a shortboard and catch waves and kind of get in the flow on a shortboard. And I caught a couple of just beautiful glassy rights with the sun kind of almost coming up and the moon right in the sky. And it was an incredible experience, like that you would expect to see on like Red Bull TV or something, like it was just like that beautiful thing. And so that was definitely like a season highlight, and like definitely a highlight of my life.
So I'm very new to the world of ocean surfing. What's considered a shortboard when you go into the world of ocean surfing? Were you still stand-up paddleboarding, or were you just like prone surfing? You were prone surfing.
Just surfing, yeah. And I think what I was riding was like, it was like 5'10", and it was probably about 33 liters, which is kind of like on the fat end of shortboards. And most of the really good guys are surfing boards that are, I don't know, 23 to 27 liters. Someone can correct me on that, but lower than that. So it's like I'm just starting to get into that kind of performance shortboard realm.
And how long did you have to stay down there? Because you were down there when everything was being locked down, correct?
I think I was there for 6 or 7 weeks total. And then I ended up getting onto like what they call a humanitarian flight, which is like the government's working together to authorize like a commercial flight to get citizens from whatever country from one place to another place.
Wow.
But you still have to pay for it.
Wow.
It wasn't that special. It was just a way to get back to Colorado from the beach.
Nice. Yeah. Well, wow. That like what a highlight though to wrap up your stay in El Salvador, but also during the craziness of it all to still get such a special moment. That's amazing. I thank you for sharing with that. That's not the photos. The photos for a later highlight, correct?
I did share a photo of what that wave looks like.
That's the wave you sent me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The wave is called La Bocana, which is like means the mouth or the river mouth. And it's primarily a left, as you can see, but it's also, there's kind of like a sneaky little right side to it as well. And it gets into some shallow water, but it's a beautiful place.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's why I didn't pull it up when you had first mentioned it, because you had said it was a right and I was like, oh, but that's a left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Well, we've switched sides now. So thank you, Bradley, for sharing that highlight. And I hope that you have some more highlights to share with us as we keep moving along throughout the show. But we're going to dive into some of those top 12 questions. So the first question, that number 12, to just make the cutoff. I always get questions about my gear. So whether it's what should I be doing with my gear after paddling, how should I be storing my gear, and what should I be doing with my gear for winter? So I wanted to start off those top 12 questions with saying, Bradley, what do you do to take care of your gear and help preserve it and its longevity?
Yeah, so a couple simple things. First of all, I just want to say that a lot of the gear that we do use, or that you'll see us using, is relatively expensive. You know, we're investing in some of the best equipment that we possibly can because it helps us do our jobs well, keeps us safe, gives us confidence, makes us look good, whatever. But a lot of this gear is built really well, and if it's taken care of, it can last for a decade or longer, you know? So I really want to encourage people to take care of their stuff, like invest in something good, take care of it. So you don't have to keep buying cheap stuff, you know? I think that's super important. And then one of the rules that I have is that I try to keep my gear out of the sun as much as possible. If I'm on a river trip, obviously that's a little bit harder to do. But if I'm pulling off of the river for the night or even for part of the day, I'm going to stash all my stuff in the shade somewhere, so it's not under that desert sun, right? And going along with that is to keep it out of the sun when I'm traveling. So I only use my roof racks on my vehicles when I'm doing like shuttle runs with people, or if I absolutely have too much gear to fit, which is kind of rare. I always roll up my paddle boards anytime I'm traveling and store them inside, out of the sun, out of the elements. So I think that's like my number one thing.
I think that's a huge, especially, I don't think the sun is it's not quite as powerful up here in Canada as it is in Colorado. I know as soon as I go down there, I notice how hot it is. However, this season I didn't go down to Colorado, and all of my paddling gear still faded just from the sheer amount that I'm actually getting out and being active. So if I was leaving it out in the sun on a regular basis, in addition to the amount that it's already being exposed, it's just going to continue to break down as opposed to just fading. So I think That's a really great point. Yeah, super valid. And I think that to keep building off of that, right, it's keeping it clean. So whether it's thinking about where you're walking, where you're going, a lot of us are wearing dry suits, which are Gore-Tex material, right? And so the first level of keeping things clean is I generally try and stay out of the sand and the mud and the dirt as much as possible, because all of that sediment and all of that grit can get in between those fibers and it's going to act like abrasion, right? Little bits of sand in your shoes are going to eat your Gore-Tex socks if you're wearing a dry suit, which is commonly what we're wearing up here in Canada. And all of those little dirt and sediment in your dry suit fibers is slowly going to take away that waterproofing. So for me, that first level of keeping my gear clean is doing the best, if I do get it all muddy and dirty, to wash it, rinse it, get most of that dirt out. And that cleaning aspect is also, goes along with the leave no trace concept of not spreading invasive species and not tracking diseases to other waterways. So keeping the gear clean is also going to help prevent that spread and contamination.
Yeah. Clean gear is happy gear. A clean board is a happy board for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I definitely have a habit of, wherever I am before I'm about ready to get on the water paddling, if my board does have some dirt on it or it got muddy somehow, I always clean it off before I always scrub it off real quick before I start paddling down the river. So.
Oh, and this, that's funny. Jackie's talking her gear and the sediment, right? So she went for a paddle and all of her gear is still full of sand from the summer. So it goes fast. Oh, here, I like this to build off before we move on from this, the sand and the sun here. Alicia wants to know how that water and salts, or the salt water versus fresh water, affects some of our gear. Do you have any experience?
Salt water can be super corrosive, so that should always be rinsed immediately. Mm-hmm. I worked at like a ocean adventures place with a big sailing catamaran and a bunch of dive boats down in the Big Island of Hawaii, and that outfit like religiously rinsed all of their equipment as soon as it came out of the ocean, all the time. It was like half the job was just rinsing stuff of salt water. Yeah, so if you're definitely taking any of your gear into salt water, that should be a habitual practice.
Yeah, I was out paddling with Norm and Tina from Coastal Stoke, and that was a part of her common practice. As soon as we were done going for the paddle out on the ocean, we'd get back to her house, and with all the gear, like she had an open box truck, most of the gear just stayed on and in the truck, and she'd get out the hose and we'd shift everything around to make sure that all the salt water was able to be removed. So I think that cleaning becomes even more important when you're talking about that ocean saltwater corrosive environment. Thanks, Alicia, for throwing that one out there. So still taking care of your gear. I had mentioned dry suits when we were talking, so we'll quickly here answer Tyler's question before we talk a little bit more about some ways to take care of our gear. So I do use a detergent. It's special. I unfortunately it's not within arm's reach and I don't have it nearby, but there is a special detergent that I use for washing my wetsuits and my dry suits. It comes in a silver bag with a little blue lid, and I've got it at most of the paddling shops, and it specifically says that it's a wash for dry suits and wetsuits. Bradley, do you know what the detergent is, or what do you use when you're washing?
I use Dr. Bronner's if I'm going to use anything. Just super mild.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I use on my paddle boards, and I guess I just always went with the specific wash for the gear, but I think Dr. Bronner's, you're right, is a great choice.
Yeah, and then on the board, if you're storing it for winter, or if it seems like it needs some extra protection, then a 303 product is going to be really like some kind of UV protectant thing. Don't use too much of it because it'll come off in the water. just enough to kind of like soak into whatever fabric material is on the board. And that's a good thing for sure.
And then on that topic, how often do you wash your dry suit inside and out, opposed to just rinsing out the outer parts? I typically wash my dry suit maybe once mid-season and then once at the end of the season. And I'm typically wearing my dry suit 6 to 7 days a week for most of the summer up in Canada. I'll be honest, wetsuit season is short up here. So yeah, I wash mine twice a season, but I regularly rinse, like fully wash it, but regularly rinse it, especially if it gets dirty, and always make sure it's fully dry on both the inside and the out. What about you yourself, Bradley?
I don't even own a dry suit, honestly. I have in the past, and maybe I would do a full like wash in the bathtub just once a season. And I guess that would be different if I was doing a bunch of multi-day trips in a row, like through the winter when I was using it. But my type of paddling and activities doesn't quite warrant that all the time. So.
And Bradley's going to tell us what he does use instead of a dry suit a little bit later on. So don't worry, the suspense will be, he will answer it. Because everybody's like, Colorado, it gets cold there. What's he wearing? Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. So we've talked about keeping it protected from the sun. We've talked about cleaning it. Bradley, when we're talking about taking care of that gear, what's something else that you make sure you do?
Yeah, I think that I would just repeat what you already said, which is just keeping the dirt and sand off of stuff, especially out of any valves. That's super important. Keep water and dirt out of valves for any inflatable things. But other than that, I think we covered it.
Totally. And so then the last thing we'll just say to get for people is when it comes to that storage of your inflatable paddle boards for winter, if you're still going to be paddling, right? You can leave them inflated, right? If you're using them, take care of them as you regularly would. But if you are going to be deflating them and storing them for winter, I recommend that you don't suck out the air, deflate them. You just let them naturally deflate. Loosely roll them, leave the valves open, and then make sure you store them in a horizontal manner. Anytime we're putting pressure on the edges when the boards are deflated, you do stand, you could abrade the sides, is what I'm trying to say. There could be abrasion on the edges and wearing that material down. Any other tips there, Bradley, with winter before we move on?
Yeah, if I have the space, depending on where I'm at, for the winter, I'll leave the boards inflated at like 1 PSI and just laid out horizontally. Totally.
Yeah, that's the best. Then they're most relaxed.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So question, that was awesome. That was a pretty thorough way to answer how to take care of your hair. I like it.
Plenty thorough.
Yeah. So moving on to our next gear question. All of my students are always fascinated to find out, and they always want to know what's in my stuff. So what's in my PFD pocket? What's in my first aid kit? And so today we're going to answer one of those. So Bradley, why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about that PFD and what you have in your PFD pocket.
Cool. So yeah, I'm definitely a minimalist. First of all, the PFD that I've been loving is an Astral, and the model is called the Ringo. And this is a Type 3 vest as far as flotation goes, and I'm pretty sure this is modeled after the women's Layla, which is also an Astral product. And then they just made a men's version of it and called it the Ringo. But this is like a Type 3 vest, but it does have the capability to put in a rescue belt into here. So you have to buy it separately, but you can put in a belt. So I can use that for guiding professionally as well, which is awesome. But this thing fits super well. It's really slim on the back. So I love this for stand-up paddling in whitewater. As far as what's in here, super basic, small knife. I don't keep it on the outside of my vest like a lot of people do, because if I'm swimming a lot and getting back onto the board or someone else's board, it gets caught on stuff, and that's going to introduce more of a hazard, I think. So just a small knife. I also have a different model that has like more of a serrated edge and like a hook on it, if I really need to get around a rope or something. But this is honestly just used most often for like cutting avocados, or like getting peanut butter out of a jar or something. So there's that. And then of course a whistle, and I use a Fox 40, which is like the best whistle you can buy. And that I use pretty often just to get people's attention.
Yeah.
And then let's see what else is in here. A couple different fin keys. One of them is a FCS style, and then the other is like the other kind of fin key that looks like FCS, but it's not. This is the one that's coming with a lot of the Badfish products and other inflatable boards. And in the industry, there's actually like two different sizes. So I try to keep both with me at all times.
That's a good tip. That's probably why people keep stripping some of the screws, because they're using the wrong size key.
Yes, that would be it. Last main thing, I'm a raft guide, or I'm guiding trips on a paddleboard with a lot of big rafts along with. So I have an Allen key that fits raft frames, and this comes in handy when things start falling apart. And then I also have, it's mostly gone right now, but I have a wrap of duct tape around it. So you just take duct tape off the spool and you just wrap it around a tool like this. You'll see people do that on like a Nalgene bottle as well. But that way, like in a tiny area, I have like, maybe 50 inches of duct tape that I could use for putting a paddle together or whatever I might need to do on the river. And last thing is usually just some snacks, right?
Yeah.
I don't have any snacks to show you, but that's the last thing that I usually try to keep in my PFD.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like I have a slightly similar but slightly different setup. So I'm multitasking. I'm going to paste my link in the comments, and then I'm going to turn around here and grab my PFD. And so similar to Bradley, because I'm out there guiding and working on the river, I have the Type 5 PFD. I like to use the Kokatat Hustler. This it is hard to show in this screen. I see why you were having some issues here. Is also a Type 5 PFD with the quick release belt. Quick release belt on the side. This will be the highlight. This will make the blooper reel for the live chats, the demonstration with the life jacket. Some of the cool features, this life jacket was new to me this year. And so I was really having fun testing out different setups and different ways to keep all the stuff on me. So I've actually been using my quick release belt and my pigtail a lot, because I've been getting back into the kayaking and canoeing world, and had to use it on the odd supper too this past season. So a cool thing about the Kokatat Hustler is that this secures into a broken D-ring. And so I can just yank it off, and it's a quick release, still on my quick release belt. And it's not secured into a hard point. So that's something that I've fallen in love with the Hustler, is that it doesn't come off like some of the button latches that I've seen in the quick release systems. My beaner never falls out, but whenever I need to yank it out, it has come off really easily. So big fan of that split D-ring.
Rita?
Yeah.
So is that D-ring it's broken, or it comes that way?
Yeah, so it came that way. It came
okay, cool.
It came purposely broken. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
It's a selling feature of the life jacket. I didn't personally break it.
Got it.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for clarifying, Bradley. And Then I agree with Bradley. I didn't love having a knife on the front of my life jacket. But I can attest with this new flap cover that covers the knife pocket on the Hustler that I haven't actually lost my knife once and it hasn't fallen out or slipped out. So I really have actually enjoyed the cover over the top of that. So I have a knife. And then to get into what is in this pocket, you can see I've been doing my best to keep my gear clean over the paddling season, but the more you're out and about, it does just eventually happen. All right, so when I go in here, I have all the components in this tiny little life jacket for my 4321 kit. I'm not going to break down what they're all for, but I will show you that they all fit. So I've got my sling. If you don't know what a 4321 kit is and you're getting out in places that things could get pinned on the river, I recommend you take a Swift water course and learn more about it. So I got some beaners in there that go along with that kit. Press-it cord, pulleys. A lot actually fits in this pocket. I was pretty surprised. Beaner with the pulley on it and a progress capturing pulley. So those are all my pieces of equipment to stay safe in the event of a swift water emergency. If I reach down to the very bottom, I didn't mean to turn that on. I have a flashlight. This is my friend Dylan's Lynx OGT headlamp. It's 100% waterproof and it's rechargeable. So it just lives in my life jacket and I recharge it every Friday during the paddling season. And the last couple things that I have in there is a backup knife, really similar to the one that Bradley's using. Sometimes if I'm rafting, I'll take my knife off the front of my jacket because I am a bit paranoid about stabbing a raft. A Sharpie in case I need to make any notes, lip chap, and the last thing that I have in there, like Bradley mentioned, is some little sugar snacks. So that's what I have in my pocket, and I'm actually amazed every time I pull it out that it all fits in there. And I will, if I am just going for a simple adventure or a dialed down adventure, I'll take some of that stuff out. But most of the time I am guiding. And so I have found it really advantageous to always be prepared. And I'm really stoked that it fits all in that pocket.
Nice. Cool. That fits a lot of stuff.
Yeah, right? It's crazy when you think about it. Most of the time my cell phone's also in that pocket too.
Wow. Yeah, to clarify, when I'm guiding, it's 99% of the time it's raft supported. So we'll have a pin kit and a lot of that same gear on a raft somewhere that's accessible, but I prefer not to have it on my chest.
Oh yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think just from all the different applications, I got used to it when I was kayaking, and I think that it's a cool way to always have it because you never know what you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Nice. So that brings us halfway through our questions, and I wanted to give you, Bradley, an opportunity to share with us another one of your season highlights before we move on to the last two questions.
Cool. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
We actually really want to hear them. That's what I've gotten the feedback from the live chats is everybody's like, we like to hear what everybody's been doing. Like, yeah. I feel more disconnected now. So this is a great way to bring it together.
Yeah. So another highlight and just a little bit of background is that for the last several winters, I've been working at some capacity for a music festival called Winter Wondergrass. That is based in Colorado, but also has events in California and Vermont. And they're essentially like outdoor music festivals in the wintertime at the base of a ski area, mixed with a lot of like beer and wine tasting and roots music and bluegrass music. And it's super cool scene. Having said that, last winter we put on our Colorado event and then unfortunately we had to cancel the other festivals. And because we couldn't have gatherings of people. And so something that the founder of the festival, Scotty Stoughton, one of my good friends, and another one of my good friends, Javier Placer, who owns Adrift Dinosaur, which is the outfitter that I work for in Utah and Colorado. They came together and they came up with something that they called River Wondergrass, right? Which is kind of like a play on words from the Winter Wondergrass music festival. And so they were grabbing artists from their festivals and providing them an opportunity to work, because a lot of musicians have been out of work for a long time, right? So they're providing them the opportunity to work, come onto one of our multi-day trips, and play music for the guests on the trip. And basically, like, it was all integrated, and like, you know, sometimes you couldn't tell the difference between who was a musician and who was a guest and who's a guide. Like, we're all just there together as friends and family by the end, right? And so I had had the opportunity to go on a few of these trips, and it was really incredible to be there in a relatively safe environment, since we're outside the whole time for 4 or 5 days. So as far as worrying about any social distancing, it was all pretty much taken care of, because we're all spread out on rafts and on the river and in camp, right? Mm-hmm. And then just to be in these beautiful deep red canyons in Dinosaur National Monument, which is in northwest Colorado, northeast Utah, on the Green and the Yampa rivers. And so it's deep red canyons. Like, you can see millions of years of geologic timescale as you go through the canyons. It's one of the darkest night skies in the lower 48, and sandy beaches that we're camping on, and really world-class whitewater, but that's also pretty approachable. There's a bunch of class 3s and a few class 4s. There's some scouting that goes on, but for the most part, I can actually guide people on stand-up paddleboards through 90% of it, even if they've never done it before, because we're providing coaching and safety, right? So it's just like, it's an out of this world experience. And so it was really cool this season as a highlight to be able to be out there with some amazing musicians. And, so I'm sitting there guiding, paddling whitewater, cooking dinner. And meanwhile, there's like, world-class bluegrass pickers playing by the campfire. So it was a super cool experience. And for next season, we actually have 10 dates already planned and announced, and you can go to adrift.com and look at the musicians. You can look at the musicians. I think the link is for the first date, which is in the end of May or early June.
Wow. Yeah. That would be a wild experience.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Wow.
If you love music, you love being outside, it's like a perfect thing.
Wow, that sounds really cool. I kind of want to come. Who knows? Maybe they'll open the borders.
Yeah.
All right. So, oh man, that sounds really cool. I'm just trying to imagine that experience. I'm like, wow, that would be so, just so amazing, and something like nothing else, right? Because live music would be totally different than just your speaker in the kitchen. True.
Yeah. As much as I love the speaker in the kitchen as well, which is what I'm doing all day, every day now.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Oh, wow. Sounds like my friend Rebecca is putting it on her list. So yeah, you'll probably see the Canadian Babes Posse upon the opening of the borders and the season back to whatever we go back to. All right. So before the last 2 questions of the night, second last one, Jackie's into, the whole crew's in. So we're coming to see you, Bradley. I'm going to try and see if I can sweet talk my spot a tail guide spot.
Yep. I can help you with that.
All right, sweet. Well, girls, don't you worry. We'll talk. So the second last question, some people were asking me, what are my top 3 gadgets? And Bradley and I were chatting in the pre-convos, and I was able to think of some gadgets, but my brain definitely got stuck in the electronic mode. And I really like where Bradley went with this. I texted him earlier saying, you know what, interpret the questions however you want. And so, Bradley, the top 3 river gadgets that you have when you're going out on the river, what are they?
So the first of all is going to be a positive mindset. I've seen positive mindsets take people so far on the river through a lot of adverse situations and experiences. So that is like the number one gadget to have in your back pocket and to deploy like at all moments, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, so that's huge. And then a couple other things. The next thing is going to be this hemp salve. So this is like a salve that is made for, it's kind of designed for like body aches and stuff. But I use it as like chapstick, and like I use it on my dry hands and like around my nails and stuff. And I also use it on cuts on the river, which is going to be mostly on my hands or my shins or my ankles from swimming in rocks and stuff. Right. So this is made, this one's made by Farmhouse Hemp, which is based in Fort Collins, Colorado. And it's a CBD product, right? So they're growing hemp plants. And then the way that these guys do it is like how they extract the oil out of the plant is they just smash it at a really low temperature and just squeeze all the liquid and oil out of it. And then take the chunks out and then mix it with beeswax and coconut oil. And so there's a ton of products out there that you'll see a lot of different people use on the river. And again, this is pertaining more to dry environments where I'm from, right? We're in the desert, literally. And so this is amazing to have with me at all times.
Well, we've noticed even, in Canada, like Alberta is super dry in the Rockies. It's the wind is always blowing. BC, British Columbia, it's a little bit hot, more moist environment. But since moving back to Alberta this year, I've been noticing my hands were cracking, my feet were cracking, and not the exact salve, but definitely a very similar hemp salve saved me this paddling season. And some of the girls on the Kootenay River trip were coming to see me at night before to say, Kate, can I have some of that salve? My hands are cracking. So I agree with you 110%. I always have some type of salve with me as a go-to gadget to have with me on the trip. Bradley, what's your next gadget?
All right, gadgets. So the last gadget that I have for the list is going to be my throw rope that I keep on my waist when I'm guiding. So it just goes around my waist like a belt, right? And it fits snugly under that kind of like smaller PFD that I have, right? And I keep it, and they're kind of designed to keep on your front, so they're easily accessible. But I always keep mine on my back because it's easier to paddle with the back there, and then if I need it, I can spin it around. But it's essentially just a bag full of rope, right? And I try not to use this, but I have it if I need to, you know. I will try, especially since I'm so mobile on a paddleboard, to go help somebody in the river if they need help. I'll always do that, see what I can do, either paddling prone or stepping off my board and running up the shore to help somebody before I introduce a rope into the river. Because this can be like an amazing tool to help save somebody, but it can also introduce a lot of danger into the river as well. So I don't throw it just all the time. More often I just like throw it just to make sure that it's not all moldy or something, you know, get the rope out. Or I'll set it up, or really a lot more even more often than that is I set it up at camp between some trees to dry our gear out. Or I'll wrap it around a big pile of paddle boards so they don't blow away in the wind, you know?
Totally.
But yep, that's the other gadget.
Yeah, totally. And just like any gear, right? Like you want to throw it out, dry it, use it as a clothesline so that it dries too. But I agree with you. It's a valuable tool to make sure that we always have when we're on the river. I love those 3 gadgets. I tried to get out of the world and convince myself that non-electronic gadgets are okay, but my brain my brain wouldn't let me do it. So I have one non-electronic one. We'll start with that. So it's my MSR 10-liter gravity filter. And so those of you that were on the Tiziko trip with me and Kim, or poor Kim, I send you love for all of our water pump struggles. I was rowing a very heavy little raft, and my arms were extremely tired, and every day I had to sit by the river and pump water because that was my job, and I didn't want to give my job up. By the end of the trip, we only pumped as much water as we needed. And so I came home and bought the gravity filter, which now we just fill the bag up and hang it in a tree. There's a hose system that allows the water to flow through, and we can literally use it like a tap on demand, fill when needed. And so no more pumping or stories of Rita struggles while pumping will occur. So the gravity filter has been something that's saved my butt now and my poor little arms throughout the whole summer. Bradley, what do you use? What do you guys use for water on your trips? Do you just haul water?
Yeah, I mean, we have rafts, right? So we're hauling water. And then if I do a self-supported trip, which we'll do like long distance trips, we bring, a bag, like dromedary containers. And then I have a pump style filter that I use. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's not working properly, it can be a lot of work to pump water.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Especially on silty water. Yeah, that was the biggest problem that we were having. That's why I was struggling so much, is it was like 5 pumps or something like that, and we needed to clean it because the water was so silty.
Yeah.
My friend Alicia wants to know thoughts on the life straw. For me, I love it. The reason I was having so many troubles, Alicia, with that pump is because when I flipped my raft, I actually lost my integrated life straw water bottle, which was what was saving my arms to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I personally really like the one that you can screw on to a water bottle and scoop the water out of the river. Bradley, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always throw a life straw in my bag as or maybe 2 of them even if I'm with some people, just as like like the last thing that we would use if we needed water. Sometimes I'll like dip down and drink out of the river with it, but it kind of like takes some work to even get water coming through it, right?
Yeah.
So usually I'm not really in the mood to do that. But I always have one with me, and I think they're good things for sure.
I found that if I soaked mine on a more regular basis, like as opposed to leaving it, let's say, for the whole winter just to dry out, like if I tried to use it on a more regular basis, that active, like the stress that it causes when you're trying to suck water through it, became a little bit less.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the moment. Yeah, Rebecca, the last straw. Yeah, I had someone throw bag me out of a hole once, and like I was just like out of breath and panicking, and they handed me a life straw, and of course all I wanted was water. And I remember just trying to suck on my eyeballs were coming out of my head and I couldn't breathe. Yeah. But they actually are really amazing tools to meet the purpose at the last minute. So my next item on the list is a solar panel. I have a couple different ones. This one's a bigger one that we were using at camp for a big group trip. I actually, I don't think I used it more than once, but the whole crew sure loved that I had the ability to help them charge all of their gadgets. So this was something that allowed everyone's gadget on our multi-day trip to stay working, right? So whether it was our friends that wanted to keep their inReaches going to text with their wives, or people to keep their cell phones going so they could take pictures. Everyone was a big fan of having some type of solar panel, and I was glad that I brought it on. And the last device or gadget that I like to know, or like to always have with me, and I usually keep this inside my PFD, is one of my Garmin watches. So it is a Phoenix 3. There is much newer technology now. But really for me, when I'm out on the river, I like to always try and start and stop this when I start paddling. It's been an easy way for me to make a river log. I can go home and add the water levels that I was paddling on for that specific site. I can add notes of the day. But I was having trouble early on in my guiding days keeping track and making logs. And this was something that helped me. I can also like hit the buttons for laps and stuff like that. If there's a hazard or a portage, I just need to remember to make notes of that later. So it's been something that's helped me keep track of data. So if it's an advantage to you, I highly recommend it. And it also works as a watch. Key, right?
Yeah. I
Nice.
think on that note, for anybody who's just getting into paddling, I think it's really valuable to keep track of your river miles, especially when you start. You know, if you ever want to get into Rita's position when you're guiding professionally, you have to have it. I kept track of mine for thousands of miles, and then I kind of stopped just because it was one more thing to do. But it would, if I had a gadget like that, it would be a lot easier, right? Because then you just hit go, and then later on you can be like, okay, on this date I was at this place. And you always have your miles there, so that's cool.
Yeah, totally. I really liked it, and that's actually when I started using it. I was in the MAST program in Fernie, learning how to be a guide, and the logbook thing was blowing my mind. And so having the reference of the path that I took as I wrote that logbook later on really helped me with that. Nice. All right. And so as we slowly start to wind down, the last question, this actually came from my question, Rebecca, and I feel like she was hoping for some like super secret trinket, and I don't know what she was hoping for, but I hope we got some good answers for her. She wanted to know if there was one piece of river gear that we could not live without. What would that be?
My turn?
We finally get the answer. Yeah, we finally get the answer to Bradley's dry suit question. Go for it, Bradley.
All right. So this, I could literally not live without having this thing, especially spring paddling in Colorado, or like right now, for example, I'm in Idaho, and I'm going river surfing tomorrow morning down on the Salmon River, right? So it's very, very cold. So what I use for my super warm gear is this, which looks like a wetsuit, but it's a semi-dry suit. If Rita can put the link in, I would highly recommend just like clicking that link so you can go to the webpage to check it out.
Right now.
But this is by a brand called Cabo out of Japan, and designed by a super smart and creative guy. His name's Ikuzo Fujimura. And I was over there a couple of years ago, and was lucky enough to have them do measurements on my body so I could get a custom made suit. So this thing is like cut exactly for my dimensions. So it's designed after suits for diving. So you don't really get wet in the center. It's full of this fleece, and basically only my extremities, like up close to my elbow or up close to my knee, is the only place where I'll feel any water come in. The rest of it stays dry and super hot. So I can go get in the river when it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit out, and stay warm and actually be hot. Every time I'm always hot at the end of the session. I'm always much warmer than I almost need to be. So the other cool thing about this is that we have integrated like super tough extra padding, like on the tailbone and on your butt, and also on the knees and the shins, all in the spots that basically we would add pad, where we used to add pads when we were paddling whitewater. We've integrated all that into the suit. So it's an invaluable tool It allows me to go out when it's super cold. I'll use it on river trips as well. It's not as comfortable to be in all day long, but it keeps me warmer, and I feel like a full-on superhuman when I'm wearing it. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So that's it's called the White Raven by Cabo.
How's the range of motion? Like, I know as someone who always paddles in a dry suit, and then I go to the ocean, I find regular wetsuits pretty restrictive. So how do you find that that suit specifically?
So this one, we actually have a little bit of extra material, just a little bit around the shoulders. So when I put it on, there'll be depending on how I'm standing, there'll be a little bit of a fold of material in here, but it's basically designed to have super full range of motion while paddling, or specifically prone paddling when I'm river surfing. So a little bit funny at first because there's a little bit of extra material, but then once you're in the water and like swimming, you don't notice it at all.
Nice. And you don't notice that material like when you're wearing your life jacket and paddling and stuff like that either?
No.
Nice.
No.
Awesome.
No, I don't notice it. No.
Nice. I think that it's that suit looks amazing. And so how long have you had that suit for?
I've had it for about 3 years.
What's the coldest you would say you've been out in it? I don't want to say water or air because that's sort of, but describe sort of your coldest you stay.
Coldest sessions. Yeah. I mean, here in Idaho right now is one of the coldest. And then also last spring, I was living in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and the Yampa River flows through that town. Which is a free-flowing river, so it starts flowing real early, like early April, which is before a lot of the stuff starts flowing in the other stuff in Colorado. And so there's still snow on the ground and maybe like snow floating around in the eddies, and I can be in the water and like sweating. It's really fun.
I want to. So my friend Jackie wants to know if only you get special sizes.
No, they do custom sizes. As of right now, you have to go to Tokyo to get measured.
Oh, speaking of which, the group of girls that was all like going off about us all coming to go on a trip with you down south, they were also hoping that you were going to invite them to Japan during this live chat as well. So when things open up, that posse, they've been bugging me to get a hold of you. So we're putting that out there live that the little posse's ready to come visit you in Japan when we.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's an open invitation there, whether I'm there or not.
Perfect.
There's a thriving community of a bunch of the nicest people that you'll ever meet. Incredible food and great surfing and great whitewater, and highly recommend it for sure. Nice. A lot of people, especially we're from the Rockies, and everyone is talking about, oh, you got to go ski the powder in Japan, right? That's what's got a lot of attention lately, and that's true. That's true, but the whitewater and the water sports are like equally as incredible.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be going back as soon as possible. So
perfect.
We always love to have a crew.
Yeah, the crew's gonna come out. All right, before we wrap it up, quickly, I will my item that I can't live without. It's funny because we didn't talk in advance, but both of our items are related to staying warm. So I'm in love with the habanero onesie liner from Kokatat. I got it this season, and yeah, it has been the go-to layer. I don't even want to say underneath my dry suit because I've been known for living in my habanero liner for almost the entire day. Wake up, you're going to go paddling later, throw on the liner, you're warm and cozy. It's always cold up here in Canada. Go paddling. And then if you're at camp or something, it dries super fast, keeps you perfect temperature in your sleeping bag. It has butt zips and crotch zips. I'm sure the boys' version has some type of convenient zipping scenario that works for them. And it's just been the most comfortable layer that's, kept me warm, happy, and comfortable in or outside of my dry suit, and also in my ski layers as I've started to transition. So I would highly recommend it. If you are choosing to wear a dry suit, it's a great layer to put under there to keep you nice and warm.
So I would assume that you probably just wear that all the time.
Yeah.
Even probably around the house too.
Yeah. So I had to buy an extra one just so that I could alternate to do laundry.
Like you have one on right now, right?
I took it off. I took it off so that I could stand up and show you. Yeah. Yeah. I actually thought about wearing it to just prove my point, but you're right. I've been known to see it. You might, if you knew what one was and you were at the grocery store in Cochrane, you might be able to figure out that I'm wearing one under my long winter coat. Before we wrap up and move on, Rebecca had a question about Japan.
Okay, yeah. What's the best time of year to paddle in Japan? So if you look at if you look at Japan on a map, the northern part of the country gets a lot of snow, and they have runoff that starts in May, right? So May and June is great for kind of runoff. But then if you go all the way to the southern part of the country, it doesn't get any snow, but there's also whitewater there because it's also mountainous. And that's all spring-fed or from typhoon season, which is like July or like June to August approximately. I've always gone in the fall just because that has always aligned with my schedule. But the fall is pretty amazing, like September into October, because it's like end of the typhoon season. So you still get a bunch of rains, which fill the rivers up, which make the whitewater really fun. But then you also start to clash into like fall foliage season, And so I've had sessions where it's like the most beautiful, like multicolored foliage that you like of all the amazing shots that you see from Japan. Also like really epic whitewater at the same time, or paddling on the lake or surfing or whatever it might be that you're into.
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. We're putting it on the list.
Yeah. One more thing. The cool thing about traveling like in the fall there is that all the whitewater community is kind of like towards the end of their season. Like as far as all the guides and the people involved. And so they're all available to hang out and go paddling with you. And that's where like you meet friends and you get to like go to all the best spots.
And we would be, this is funny. Rebecca's already got the plan. Yeah. And I was going to say, and all of the people that are paddling up here, we would all be like crushing it after a hard season of building and progressing. So it's a good time to go paddling in the fall, or travel paddling in the fall after you've gotten your sea legs under you. I just like showed up in Ecuador in the middle of winter. I was like, oh, right. This is what standing on the water feels like. So it's nice to go when you already have your legs. And so, wow, that went by fast. And I like all the side combos. I think that was, it added quality for sure. And I really appreciate everybody that tuned in and talked to us along the sides. Before we go, Bradley, tonight and wrap up the first 4 top 12 questions of 2020, I want to know, what are you getting up to right now? What are you looking forward to as whether we transition or maybe it's for next season? What's on the books for Bradley right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm just kind of taking it easy, staying here with my sister in Donnelly, Idaho, and I've been here for a couple of weeks. And tomorrow I'm going to set off on a little road trip into Oregon, go surf in Bend, Oregon, where there's a really nice man-made wave, and then do a little bit of whitewater paddling, and then head to the West Coast, and drive all the way down into Baja. So through down the Oregon coast, down the California coast, and then down to Baja, Mexico, and just surfing most of the way. I didn't really want to, I kind of like have a little bit of like a seasonal thing that if I'm like indoors too much during this time of year without too much sunlight, like it can be very hard on me. So I have to like really adamantly like be out doing things this time of year or else it can get kind of rough. So I thought that by doing a little bit of a road trip, I can hopefully stay safe, and hopefully I don't have to like, I'm not imagining that I'm pulling into communities and like putting people at risk. I hope that I'm not, like as far as COVID-19 goes. I'm going to kind of stay to myself and like go into the grocery store once a week and then just be on the beach and just kind of like outside most of the time. So I'm hopefully it feels like a responsible thing to do, and I know it'll be good for my mental health. So yeah, just playing in the water is basically what I'm up to.
Nice. Where are you? McCall and Donnelly used to be one of my second homes.
Oh, really?
But I was new to the whitewater world when I was rafting and stuff down there. Where are you going surfing on the salmon?
Yeah, so down to Riggins, the town of Riggins, which is like a classic little like outfitter post town, really cool. And there's a wave called the Mill Wave that's just above town.
Yep.
And the river's flowing at about 3,500 CFS right now, and that works pretty good for shortboards.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's something.
And then there's also, there's a lot of hot springs up here too. So
the hot springs are those normally, I can't remember what they're called, but those in the backwoods, the square pools that like slowly drop off. Those are my favorite. But yeah, I'm glad that you're getting out there, Bradley. I'm jealous that you get to go surfing tomorrow and get to go to Baja. But thank you so much for taking the time and to chat with me today and answer some of those questions, engage with some of my fun friends and viewers that tuned in. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on all that rad gear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I think it's really cool how you're engaging with everybody here. And for anyone who's watching this now or in the future, like feel free to reach out to me at any time in regards to anything. If you just want to introduce yourself or if you have a question about gear, no matter how trivial, I'll get back to you at some point and give you a biased opinion of what I think will be your best choice or whatever that might be. And then I hope to meet all of you someday soon.
Yeah, totally. For some paddling adventures.
Yep.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. And stay tuned as I let you know what our next 4 questions will be and who my guests will be next week. I'll give you a hint. Everything's going to be a little board related. All right, guys. Thank you and have a great night.
Thanks.